Hey, Grace Church family, here we are not meeting again for a second Sunday in a row due to snow. Roger Peterson earlier this week, he came into the office and he poked his head into my office and he said, "So, who is not slated to preach again this Sunday?" Well, we know that this is from the Lord. Psalm 147 tells us that God sends out his command to the earth. His word runs swiftly. He gives snow like wool. He scatters frost like ashes. He hurls down his crystals of ice like crumbs. Who can stand before his cold? God is reminding us and giving us a display of his beautiful power in creation. And he's displaying all of his goodness to us today, even though we can't gather. He knew, even before time began, that on this day, Grace Church at Willow Valley would not be gathered for worship. It does bring up an interesting question, though. The question, what are God's purposes when he keeps us from good things? It's a good thing that we do when we gather together as a church family to worship him on the Lord's Day. What might his purpose be in keeping us from gathering? I think about what Paul wrote in Romans chapter 1 when he talked about how he had often made plans to go and gather together with the church in Rome, but his plans kept getting hindered time and time again. And I often wondered, how did God use that providential hindering of Paul's plan and keeping him from being able to gather with Rome? How did God use that in Paul's life? He used it to create an even greater eagerness and longing in Paul's heart and to build up his anticipation so that if and when he would gather with the church in Rome, his opportunity to encourage and bless them and for him to be encouraged and blessed by them would be even sweeter and more precious than if God had immediately just blessed Paul's plans right off the bat. Could be that God is doing the same for us these past two Sundays, keeping us from being able to gather so that he might build up in our hearts a fresh eagerness, longing, and anticipation, reminding us of the really good thing that we have in our church family that sometimes we can forget until it's gone. So we think about it, each and every one of us as believers, we ultimately, our deepest anticipation and longing is to be with God in heaven, face to face. And every day that passes where that isn't the reality only serves to make that day when we finally meet him all that more sweet. And we gather together as a church family because we want a little foretaste of heaven. There's nothing like church that gets us so close to heaven in this lifetime than gathering together. And so we trust that God has purposes to build up our anticipation and our affection for one another. You think about what Hebrews says in Hebrews chapter 10, verses 24 and 25, that it's when we meet together that we are stirred up and encouraged in our walk with the Lord. So, Grace Church, even though we can't gather together, we've put together some resources for your edification, whether you use them for your own personal worship or for your family worship. We've encouraged you to read from a passage in the Psalms and also from the book of Job, two passages about the wonder of God's creative power. You might just open up your Bible, reflect on those passages as you watch the snow falling outside. There's also two songs that we've listed, an old hymn called All Things Bright and Beautiful, talking about God's creation, and also a beautiful song that talks about how when Jesus came to earth, it was a little bit like the coming of a winter snow. And you might reflect on those songs for your personal encouragement. For the kids, Mackenzie, our children's ministry director, has put together a lesson so that your kids could engage with Jesus today, and you might lead them through that lesson or let them look at the material and enjoy that together. For those of you who do have kids in the home, go outside and experience God's goodness through watching the joy that your kids have in enjoying the snow that's falling. So, Grace Church, we miss you. We love you. We trust God's purposes these past 2 Sundays in not enabling us to gather, but we do pray that next Sunday we would be together again. And oh, how much more sweet will it be since we haven't been able to gather the past 2 weeks. Blessings.